win over what we call unfair maps. And so, again, all that's decided. So, you think it's a little election, but the repercussions of this election are going to extend far into the future.
Absolutely. Pastor Gilliard.
Yeah, and I was going to, Marquise kind of jumped on something I was going to remind us of. Here in North Carolina, we have a majority group in the Senate and in the House, the State House and the State Senate. I want you to hear this. A group that is in the majority that was represented by the minority. So they are in power, but got the smallest percentage of votes. And you may think mathematically, how is that possible? It is possible because of gerrymandering districts.
Right.
Whoever comes across the finish line on November 4th will draw those districts all over again. And if that group previously drew them that way, so a minority of the people, so when you hear stuff like, even with the White House right now, when you hear things like, we're going to put up a nominee for the Supreme Court because the nation put us in power to make this decision, that is a lie. The nation did not put you in power. The minority of the people, the smallest percentage of the people voted you in office. And so we have to be really cautious about making sure every single vote matters. And when you take, our governor won this election by what, 10,000 votes? Now you take that by 100 counties and the number of precincts, I should know, but I don't know how many precincts are in the state. Stephanie probably knows.
It came down to 10 votes a precinct.
10 votes a precinct.
Wow.
10, that's one street. That's not even a whole public housing division. It's one community. It's a pew in a church. We're sitting in Greater Joy Church, 10 folk get on a pew.
Yeah.
That's the people that decide the election. So this, and we drawing this out, but that's how important this vote is.
Pastor Gilliard, there's a question that is asked, how did the popular vote lose?
The popular vote lost because of the Electoral College. And there is a process underway about how it can be revised. It's called the National Popular Vote. There's a momentum and there's discussion about what that looks like. But I want you, and that's a great question, because too oftentimes people use, and I'm not suggesting this person is doing this, so the short answer is we lost because of the Electoral College. But let me go a little bit deeper. We don't have that issue in state races. So I understand you may feel like, well, my vote didn't matter because, the person who got 3 million more votes still didn't get the White House. But to Stephanie's point, that's not the case for the governor. That's not the case for state senate, U.S. Senate. That's not the case for Supreme Court justice, associate justice, district court judges, school boards, city council, county commissioners. That is not the case. And I'm a little biased because I am on the ballot as well. I tell folk, it's not the worst idea in the world to vote bottom up, because we need to make sure every vote gets cast. And so, yes, Electoral College means popular vote doesn't always win. However, popular vote always gets you across the finish line on every other race.
Are there any other questions, Bishop Daniel, online about that? Okay, so you've heard tonight why it is important. The next question I wanted to get to is a question that we have discussed in the ENCMA, Eastern North Carolina Ministerial Alliance, and that's been put out there. I've heard it over and over again. Early voting wins elections. I mean, it's proven that you vote early, you can win an election. So I want to talk about why early voting is important. Let's talk about it. And I'll start with someone who always talks about it. I'll start with Pastor Gilliard.
Man, I'm Pastor Nehemiah, I'm passionate about this thing. Because of what you just said, early voting wins the election. I think it is magnified exponentially and I know we're going to probably discuss this a little bit later maybe, but it's exponentially important during COVID. And so, what I would encourage people to do is, first of all, I would encourage everybody to vote early. I really would. Whether that means going to an early voting location. Nash County, we have 4 of them. We'll talk about the other counties as well, because we know lots of counties are watching this right now. Whether that means going to an early vote location or it means mailing in your ballot early. Either way, you need to vote early. It is, and this is the deal. You don't know what's going to happen day 2, day 3, day 5, day 10 of early voting. So when you have the moment to do it, you seize the moment. And recognize this, when November 3rd comes in North Carolina, you don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to be a blizzard, snow, rain, anything that can happen to prohibit our ability to vote at the last minute. And this is too important to vote at the last minute. And so because of that, I want to encourage everybody to vote early. The other thing I'll say very quickly, Pastor Nehemiah, about this early vote is that people have to recognize the construct of early voting. Mm-hmm. The construct of early vote was efforts to suppress vote. Right. So people that owned businesses would prohibit people from taking off on election day. Or they would make them work overtime, or they would mandate their hours, or they would send them to a remote location so they could not vote. So the reason we have early vote is to prohibit any possibility of voter suppression. And so when you vote early, you are acknowledging the existence of former suppression and even current models of suppression and saying, I'm not willing to be a part of that. So those are some of the reasons I think we need to vote early.
Well, I just want to, I agree with everything Reverend Gaillard said, and if I just could share a personal story of how I did an early vote, and then my vote wasn't counted. In 2016, I was in law school, and I was, booked and busy, and I said, I'm just going to vote by mail. And I waited till almost the absolute last day to turn in my vote by mail ballot. And 3 weeks after the election, I got a notice in the mail that said, your signature on your ballot does not match your license. And so you can sign this affidavit and let us know that this is really yours. It's 3 weeks after the election. What was that going to do? That wasn't going to help the price of tea in China. That wasn't going to do anything. And so I just provide that story as a cautionary tale that there are, if you do vote early, especially with your absentee ballot, you can remedy that if there is an issue.
That's a great point.
If you wait until the last absolute second, there is no legal remedy after Election Day. If your absentee ballot, especially if there is an error. So I provide myself, and I tell a story all the time, as a cautionary tale of what not to do, of making sure that you're voting early and that you're, checking out the Board of Election sites to see exactly, especially with absentee ballots, how your absentee ballot should look. Because it's too important for something like my signature was a little bit different to block your vote, and had I done it early enough, my vote would have counted.
And I think that's important. That's a cautionary tale. And what Pastor Gaillard said, anything could happen, weather or whatever. I know that in 2016, I know this for sure, that a lady went to vote. She did early voting. 3 days later, she died. Her vote counted.
Wow. That's a great.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow.
3 days later, she died. But guess what? She had already voted. I voted while I was living. Huh?
Yes,
Wow.
sir.
Yeah, so you think we don't know what's going to happen with the weather, but none of us are promised tomorrow. That's
Wow.
a great. Well, another thing about early voting is that it has this opportunity for what we call one-stop voting. So if you are a person who's registered to vote and you can vote with no problem, fine. But you might want to take your cousins with you, your brothers, your sisters, whatever. Some of them might not be registered, or some of them might have moved recently or whatever. Well, if you vote early and you take them with you, when you go there, you can register and vote all at the same time at that same location. If you have something with your address on it and your name on it, some light bill or your driver's license, something like that. If you've never voted before, you can go ahead and register and vote at that same time. Or if you move or any kind of problem, as it was expressed, they can fix it if you go and vote early. But if you wait till election day and something happens, God forbid, then or there's some kind of mix-up and those things happen, then your vote is in jeopardy. So we always say vote early. There's no reason not to. The schedule is more flexible, and so we even have Saturday and Sunday voting in many cases. So it's just a thing to do.
And it's not by mistake that the United States Postal Service is now topsy-turvy, and nobody knows what's going on with the United States Postal Service.
Right.
So the thing is that early voting kills all of that. If you go out and you early vote, you can kill it. Also, people not wanting to get caught up in lines. Right. You don't want to get caught up in lines because of the COVID-19. Well, go and early vote, and let's get it over with. You have voted. Pastor Worthy.
I pretty much am going to agree with everything that's already been said. Three words come to mind from me. Number one, think about the options of early voting. You've got several different options. You've got a course of 15 days. Nash County even has the option of Sunday voting. So you've got the options there. What an awesome thing it would be if the saints in Nash County would take the souls to the polls and get out there and let the vote be heard. Second thing we've talked about are the opportunities. Pastor Gaillard has already touched on it in some areas of how people would actually use it as an attempt to suppress the vote. Well, now that's no longer on the table. If we don't vote, it's our fault. Yeah. It's our fault. And that's what it comes down to. And then thirdly, let's consider the occasion. Just a couple of months ago, we celebrated the life of one of the greatest figures as it related to voting and voting rights in the life of John Lewis. And I think about a statement that I see folks quoting, and we're wearing shirts about it. Here is our moment to activate it. If we're going to get in trouble, let's get in some good trouble.
Right.
Let's get in some necessary trouble.
Yes.
In my mind, early voting, my tongue's tied up tonight, early voting is good trouble.
Yeah.
It is good trouble. Again, with COVID going on, you're going to have to deal with social distancing, wearing masks, standing in longer lines. Those sort of things are in play. With early voting, in most cases, from my experience, I have been in and out in less than 5 minutes. Most cases in 2016, when my wife and I voted early, there were 2 people in front of us, and we were able to get in and get right out and get the vote. So, beloveds, please see the importance of it. It is important. It's already been stated, Pastor Smith, you stated it. You know, most elections are won in early voting. So let's think about the options, the opportunities, as well as the occasion.
There's a question being asked, my fellow panelists, asking, is it true that you can go and request ballot and turn that ballot in at the same time?
I'm not sure that I'm understanding.
Absentee?
No, and so, and Marquise, I know you're the expert on the panel. My understanding of how this works, and I'm pretty sure that I'm correct, is that you can request your mail-in ballot. That ballot is then mailed to you. You can fill that ballot out, take it to an early voting location. You still would have to wait in line. Then they'll have someone that can see you, that can work with you, get that ballot cast. But you cannot. I mean, if you're going to request the ballot, then that's basically you coming to the early voting location. And so I think maybe that's where the confusion is. Is that what you were thinking, Marquise?
Yeah. You know, you said it exactly right. Absentee ballot, it will have to be mailed to you. But yeah, if you're there and they give you a ballot, you might as well, and you want to vote and turn it in right there. That's early voting. I like how you said that.
There is actually a hotline. So if you have questions such as this, and it's a random Thursday afternoon, and you want to call someone and ask someone, there is actually a voter assistance hotline that has been activated, and that number is 1-833-868-3462. Again, this is a voter assistance hotline. There is no question too big or too small. These are voting experts, many of whom are voting attorneys, who will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have regarding voting.
It just sparked some questions on the social sites asking, so will you guys address what you feel is best? Early voting, absentee ballots. So hey, they right in our area now. And you know, we have been talking about this over and over, right? And it goes back to this piece that Gaillard is so passionate about, and it is that we have stated all of that stuff works, but the safest thing and the most effective piece is for us to get to early voting. So that's what we're pushing. I'll plug this, and I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman. As pastors, we have agreed, myself and Worthy and Smith and Gaillard have agreed that on the very first day of early voting, we're going to be at the polls. And we're going to be there first thing in the morning. And when we come out, you can touch that, Pastor Worthy, but when we come out, we're going to be on social media, and we're going to be stating to all of our constituency that we have been in as the leaders of big congregations in our area, we have been to the polls and we want our people to go.
And that's so very important. We were, tonight we'll talk about other things, but out of all of the ways to vote, the most effective, I think, and the most effectual will be voting early. We need to encourage everyone to vote early, and Pastor Gary will get into that later when we talk about the Create Your Date initiative. That's what that's all about. But we need to make sure that we encourage people to get out and to vote early, especially in our community, in the African American community. We need to get them to get out and vote early. You know what I mean? It is so very important because so many of us, we're distrustful of whether or not our vote will be counted if it's absentee. We're distrustful if we mail it in. So we know early voting works. So do that. You're not distrustful of that. So let's do that. We just have to make sure that our people know where they can go to vote and how to check on their registration, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Anything, Pastor?
Yeah, I was just going to, to specifically address the question as well, to add what's been said, because the question is asked, what do we think is the best? And again, I agree with Pastor Nehemiah. I think number one on my list is early vote. I don't want to ignore the large numbers of mail-in ballots that have been requested in our state, more than we've ever seen before in North Carolina. What I would simply say to those individuals, I have an 87-year-old mother, so you may be thinking, well, what about an older person that you're fearful of their safety, of their health, etc.? I'm taking my 87-year-old mother with me to early vote. Now, you may not feel comfortable with that. What I would suggest, and Stephanie touched on this very effectively, if you are going to mail in your ballot, I think that's a number 2 option for me, still mail it in early, immediately. So it's still early voting, so we have the ability to catch the error so that your vote counts. And I'm going to just tell you this. James Gaillard talking, pastor in this community, I think the polls should be empty on November 3rd. I think we should have gotten everybody across the finish line in early voting before November 3rd. If your date to vote is November 3rd, I think you need to rethink that. You have no clue. We've already talked about why. And we have no clue what's going to happen. And so by all means, it's got to be early voting.
I want to add to that with early voting. When we vote early, let's take somebody with us.
Yes.
Each one, reach 1, 2, 5, or 7. Take somebody with you. I want to even encourage fellow pastors. Our vans have been sitting still
6 months.
for 6 months.
Yes.
To the polls.
What a wonderful time. If you're only taking one person and a driver in the van, immobilize the church vans and let's get some of our seniors who are serious about voting out to vote early. That is important. We gotta use every option that we have to really get the message out so that we can totally be participating in the process. So let's consider that. Let's consider every option. But let's do it.
And let us, Dr. You a good point. I'm not part of the clergy up here, but our sick and our shut in. I think my mother gets all of her news from the church. She picks up the Black magazine and gets her news from the church house. And we have been out of the church for 6 months.
Right.
And so she hasn't gotten a knock on her door to tell her about voting. There's no canvassers going on. Right. She's not that tech savvy, so she's not zooming into the church meetings. Right. And so I think it's incumbent upon the church, and that's all members of the church, not just pastors. It's pastors, deacons, lay members, to reach out to those, the mothers, the older members of the church, and make sure they have the information that they need. If they need help requesting a ballot because they've heard all this stuff is online, help them. If they need a ride, both of you put a mask on, put gloves on, take them to the polls. We cannot forget, I think, about our elderly in this time, because so many of them live alone as well. Absolutely. And they're not getting the necessary information that they need, many of them. And so I think the church is the best place. One of my favorite quotes is, God is not going to go straight to the White House and skip the church house. So the church house has to, be the hands and feet in this situation to bring the change in the White House.
Pastor Smith, since this whole thing is about education, there are a couple of questions, kind of backtracking, if
Sure.
you will allow me.
Yes.
They're asking if Marquise could give us all of the early voting dates. And the second question was, can you do curbside at early voting?
Yes, you definitely can do curbside or early voting. I have Edgecombe County and Nash. I know there might be a wider audience that I'm unfortunately not prepared for, but if you have all that stuff together, do you have all the counties that? We do. Okay, so you want to do that now, or we're going to do that at the end, or how? Well, we're going to do that in a few. Okay, cool.
We'll answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah. But early voting, I think we can answer that question October 15th through October 31st.
Right.
That's the early voting, but the dates and the hours may vary depending on
Yeah,
what's there.
and the sites.
And the sites. So we have that. We have that. We'll discuss that. Anything else, Bishop Daniel?
The other question is it possible to call and verify if your vote was counted because of post office glitches?
Yeah, well, you can verify. So there is and you know what, it's not a call, but there's this, and I want to get the name of it exactly right. But you can go online and track the whole process of your absentee ballot. I know we haven't really got into that yet, but it's called. It's a tracker that. Oh yeah, there it is. Ballot tracks. And so if you go to ncvoter.org, click on absentee voting, and all of this information is there. There are a lot of resources that will get you. But when it talks about tracking a ballot, it's called by using ballot tracks, ballot, and then TRAX. So you can Google that or whatever, and that will allow you to see where your ballot is or whatever. Also, if you go to ncvoter.org and just look at your voter status, you can see the status of your absentee ballot, whether or not you, whether it's been requested, whether that request has been submitted, all that kind of stuff you can see. And you've always had the option to do that before, even now. But understanding the time that we're living in, they had created something special so that you could track your progress when it comes to absentee balloting. So you, and I don't know if we have a website or something. If you go to ncvoter.org, you can definitely look this information up, click on the link, and you can track your ballot.
Or you could go to North Carolina State Board of Elections, ncsbe.gov. And also we have a site for Nash County, and I think many of the other counties also.
And also, when you are requesting your mail-in ballot, you do it with an absentee ballot request form. So make sure that you get that if you're going to do it this way. Fill out the application completely. If you have not done that or you don't know how to do it, work with someone that will help you. Submit that request to your local election office. Make sure that you request that ballot as far in advance of the election as possible. The deadline to request the ballot by mail is received by Tuesday, October the 27th, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, October 27th is the deadline to request the ballot by mail. When your ballot arrives, you read it carefully and follow the instructions to complete it and return it. Now, of course, we're talking about all different options.
Right.
But we are promoting, ENCMA is promoting, vote early.
Right.
Right. We're talking about go ahead, yeah, you voted early, but we're asking you to go and do your early voting.
Yeah.
And we're going to go into that in a few. Yes.
Just that they're asking if Miss Stephanie and Marquise will pull your mics closer so they can hear you a little clearer.
Okay.
Chairman, there was also there's another question that's being polled. I don't know if we're jumping ahead. Asks if someone could address a contingency plan for violence and intimidation at polls.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are poll watching organizations that are there that are going to be available. I do know that there is an organization that we're going to be participating in here in Nash County that has to do with partnerships between clergy and attorneys, so that we'll be monitoring activity. But, you know, again, we have to recognize that we have to be willing, we have to recognize there might be anything that we may have to encounter. This is part of the process of being diligent about making sure that we still vote. But I can say that here in Nash County, historically, We have had very safe voting precincts and locations, and I would encourage people not to be intimidated or to feel uncomfortable, to feel very comfortable that there will be safety at the polls.
Absolutely, and Democracy NC does a statewide voter protection program, and so there will be people at many of the polling places that will be there to make sure, whether it be intimidation or just if there's any mistake that's made at the polls or what have you, that someone will be there to talk to you. She mentioned the hotline before to get you that information. So there are lawyers that will be standing by to make sure that your rights are protected. So, and again, voter intimidation is a part of that. But we are working diligently, a lot of these organizations on the ground, to make sure that doesn't happen. And if we get any whiff or hair of intimidation, maybe even from a police car in the area that sometimes can be intimidating to voters, whatever it may be the case, that we are on that and that we're letting people know that this is happening so that it can be stopped. So yes, that is a real concern, but we do historically have, as he said, safe polling places, and should we see anything that gives us pause, we will be working to prevent that and to stop it.
And the 1833 number in which I gave before, once early voting does begin, that number will also be a place where you can voice any complaints or discrepancies or issues that you've had. So you can use it for questions, and you can use it if you've faced any intimidation, any kind of discrepancies as well.
Ms. Stephanie, does that also include tampering with mail? I guess they were speaking of some instance of their ballots being tampered with as they tried to mail them in.
Like a
Mail
problem
in.
with mail-in ballots?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I believe that you can use this number as well for mail-in ballots, and if not, they will direct you to the correct person.
I think too that I wanted to make sure that when we're talking about intimidation and we're talking about safety of the polling place, we also have to consider that this is COVID-19 time. So right now, as I understand it from Ms. Pegues earlier, that we had invited some state board of election people here, and the reason why they couldn't come is because they are doing a training as we speak as to how to keep those polling places sanitized. So I know that can be intimidating too, because we know that COVID is out there and people are thinking, oh, well, if I go, everybody's been in there. But they're going through a process right now of how to keep that stuff sanitized. So that's good information to know too. All right. Anything else on that issue? All right.
Well, so they mentioned tampering with the mail, and I just wanted to say, so we have a thought about is mail-in voting secure, but I just want to say anybody tampering with any mail, period, before now, if you just trying to look at my bill, that's a felony. You can't do that. So if you have if you suspect that happening at all for any reason, you can contact the authorities about that for sure. With things like stealing people's identities and all that kind of thing. That's real trouble. So if you have any concerns along those lines, then let your voice be heard.
And along with that, let's not forget too, that those who choose to vote absentee mail-in also have the right to carry that ballot directly to their county state board of elections, wherever that office is within the county. You can actually carry that ballot right in. So that's another option as well. If you're not feeling comfortable dropping it in the mail and are willing to take a quick trip, then that's another option, and making sure that ballot is carried into your Board of Elections office. And I think if you're going to go absentee ballot, that could be probably the most securest way to make sure your ballot is there. But as Pastor Gaillard has said, let's make sure we do it early. So if there are any discrepancies, they can be dealt with in a timely manner.
Let's plug the Alliance one more time. The Alliance is saying that
say it
on
loud,
October the 15th,
that's where we're going to be.
We're going to be
in the morning at
We will
6
be voting.
a.m.,
That's where we're going to be.
we're going to be at the polls.
That's it.
Yes, sir.
So let's dispel any possibility of any issues by going to the poll early that morning. Let's get it out of the way. We know that those are options. The
Correct.
absentee ballot is an option. General election is an option. But for chairman, we are still pushing that we want everyone to go to the polls for early voting, and let's get it out of the way.
And I would also strongly suggest that if you are going to take this option of mailing in, don't clothespin it to your mailbox and expect
Absolutely.
the mailman to pick it up.
Absolutely.
Don't put it in the mailman's hands. Take it to the post office.
Absolutely.
If you're gonna do that, you give it to someone so you're on camera giving it to them. Huh? So you got you a backup, because I think that, you know, we do some stuff. I'm gonna clothespin it to the mailbox, and the mailman will get it. Don't do that. I strongly suggest that you not do
Absolutely.
that. All right, take it in. Don't even give it to the mailman. Take it into the post office so that you know that it was mailed. You did it yourself.
And let me just add something that people probably don't think is a real thing, but I can assure you it's a real thing because I've dealt with it in the last 7 days. There are communities in Nash County that have limited access to post offices. In some of those communities, the post boxes in the street, in the community, have been damaged. And the U.S. Postal Service has been slow moving to replace them. So there's not a box available where it normally is available for people to mail.
Wow.
If that happens, I can tell you it's a real thing because I've dealt with it in the last 7 days. If that happens in your community, please notify your state representative, your senator, someone that can run the interference for you that can in turn get that corrected. And so I just want to throw that out there for people that just have to take it to a mailbox, because you have a few of those situations. And I'm not scared to call it out. I specifically have had this situation in Castalia, and a person reached out. We've worked with the postmaster. We've got it corrected, got it replaced, but this had been missing for several months. And so just understand we are still in a season of voter suppression. And again, here we go preaching the same sermon, early voted.
There we go.
Early voted.
Okay, so inadvertently, what we did was we traipsed into some of the other topics that we had planned to discuss. So now we're going to go straight into create your date, because that is important. Pastor Gaillard will present that to us right now, and we'll make sure that we get all the information out to you. But I turn it over to Pastor Gaillard right now with create your date.
So we're going to talk about the create the date. You're going to see social media graphics. This is a process that was developed by the Eastern North Carolina Ministerial Alliance. The concept is real simple. We don't think it's good enough to just have an open voting, early voting period that's so wide open where people just say, okay, well, I'll get to it eventually. We're asking people to literally create your date. Have a voting plan. So what we have done is created some options for you to vote by way of precinct or to vote by way of affinity group on a specific day. And if you can't vote that specific day with your affinity group or your precinct, then you create a new date, but identify what that date is. And so you're going to see graphics where we're saying on this particular date, Divine Nine votes. On this particular date, public school teachers vote. On this particular date, clergy votes. On this particular date, community organizations vote. On this, all senior citizens, healthcare workers, factory workers, barbers, cosmetologists. You're going to see Masonic lodges. And then also within those dates are precincts. So you identify your affinity group, you identify your precinct, but we want you to create the date and create a healthy competition amongst your affinity group about who can get out the biggest vote. I would love to see a competition with the Deltas and the AKAs to see who can turn out the most vote in 24 hours. I would love to see that. I would love to see that kind of healthy competition between the Eastern Stars and the Masonic lodges, or between, you know what, I mean, you know, between our churches. Who can turn out the most votes between the Baptist churches and the Methodist churches? Or, I mean, we can create healthy competition around the issue of voting, and that's what create the date is. So you've heard Bishop Daniel say, we have created our date. Our date, those of us who are on this platform for the most part who are pastors, our date is Thursday, October 15th at 8 a.m.
Right.
That is our date. Right? That's when we have created our date. So don't just leave it open. When you say to people, well, go to the doctor and get your MRI or get your
get your prostate checked or get your colonoscopy and just go sometime between the 15th and the 31st. That does not work. You have to identify the actual date, and so, everything else that matters to us, we bring it down to a date. I know when my mortgage is due. I know the date is due.
Right.
They
Me
don't just
too.
leave it open. Most of us know, right? If you have a car note, you know the date it is due. You have a doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, you know the date is due. Your birthday, you know the date it is. This voting is too important to leave it open to 16 days. Identify your date, create the date, and then promote it broadly and consistently on your social media with your sphere of influence and in your community to encourage other people to do the same thing. So we've created graphics for Nash County, Edgecombe County, Wilson County, Halifax County, Northampton County. And if you want a graphic created for your county, we're willing to do that. On all of the graphics, it shows the early voting locations, the times of early voting, and a phone number, a place that you can call to get your questions answered. So that's the Create the Date campaign.
Right, and it has a place on that. It has a place on your Create the Date where you can put, you can pencil in or pen in what your date is, and then it has another little place under there where you can pen in your alternative date just in case you don't make your first date. But we're pushing that you make that first date. But if you don't, so Create Your Date is really 2 dates. You're giving your initial date that you plan to work with your affinity group or whatever, or your precinct, and then it has another date there, alternative, just in case you did not, but, life happens and you're not able to get there. It has that little piece under there too.
Right, and I just, I've never pledged a fraternity or sorority, but I would love to see people say, you know what, this is my line. This is the group of people I pledge with at whatever school, and on this date we all voting. And create that healthy competition. I mean, I think, deacons at a church, all y'all make up your mind, go to the poll together. Deaconesses and elders and ministers, and the list goes on. And if I could, reference this as well about the, vote paraphernalia.
Yes.
We are encouraging, Pastor Worthy has a paraphernalia, Pastor Daniel has paraphernalia, we have paraphernalia at Word Tabernacle, and we want to encourage professionals. The only thing you will see me preach or teach in now to November 3rd is this shirt, this sweatshirt. That's all I'm wearing. Now, to every time you hear me open my mouth,
You're going to wash it, though, right?
I'm not even gonna wash it, sir. I'm not even washing it.
Wait a minute, Doc.
I'm not even washing
minute,
it.
Doc.
I'm not even gonna wash it. I'm gonna wash it.
Well, you virtual, so they won't nobody smell it but
nobody
you.
gonna
Yeah.
smell
I'm not washing
Spray the
it.
cologne or something.
All you're gonna hear from me is Jesus and vote.
Amen.
And every time I get up to open my mouth and open the scriptures, you're going to see something on my body that says vote. The reason I say that is get with one of these pastors, get you a T-shirt. If you're a dentist, it's okay to see. You don't have to see patients in the next now to November 3rd in a scrub top. You can see your patient in a shirt that says vote. It doesn't say who to vote for. It just keeps the message in front of people. If you are a mechanic, you can work on the car with a T-shirt that says vote. And so we're asking every professional, every paraprofessional, every blue-collar worker who doesn't have to wear a uniform, wear some paraphernalia that says vote so that we can keep the significance of this message in front of everybody in our community.
Well, I'm gonna take a point of privilege as president, and I'm gonna plug Pastor Worthy, since y'all will let me take a point of privilege as president and host pastor, right? Yeah. And I just want to because we try to look out for each other, promote small business, and Pastor Worthy, what we're wearing tonight is something that he designed, and so we're excited about that. We have the ones that have vote on them also that Pastor Gelliard designed, and so we're wearing these things just to keep the message out. And Pastor Smith, if you can talk about it more, that this is what we're going to do between now. That's what Gelliard is talking about between now and November 3rd.
Correct, and so I'm in with it. We've talked at ENCMA about it, that what we will be preaching from now until November the 3rd is Jesus and voting.
Right.
Preaching Jesus and voting. That's what we're doing. And for all of those who are out there, because we are members of the clergy, most of the people on here, I came to here, I think, last year. And you had me, and we, just for a few minutes before I had to go and preach. And I know there might be some folk out there who are watching and saying, voting, that ain't biblical. But it is biblical right at its very foundation, because three voted and one volunteered. Three voted that we should be saved. And it was a three votes between the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Well.
And so they voted that Jesus would come and would die for our sins. So voting is biblical. I just want you to know that voting is biblical. And we need people to get out, and we need you to vote. We want to get some important information out to you. So if you got your pen and your paper, we want to get some of these dates out to you. Election day is Tuesday, November the 3rd, 2020. North Carolina allows any voter to request a ballot by mail. However, we are promoting early voting. You can also vote in person in North Carolina during the early voting and on Election Day. So Election Day is November the 3rd, Tuesday, November the 3rd. Registration deadlines. Online is October the 9th. By mail, it has to be postmarked by October the 9th, and in person by October the 9th. The absentee ballot deadlines, you get your last day to request is October the 27th. Return by mail, it has to be postmarked by November the 3rd, and return in person November the 3rd by 5 p.m. So that's why Pastor Gale is saying don't wait until the last minute. That's why Marquise Thompson says don't wait till the last minute. Go ahead and get this done now. Early voting is October the 15th through October the 31st, but the dates and hours may vary based on where you live. And so that's why I create your date. The graphics that we have, and we have, 5 counties, is that right? We have 5 counties. We've already done that work for you. So if you'll see that online, you'll see it on my Facebook page, all the graphics, and I'm sure on everybody else's Facebook page and their website. So we'll have that information for you. And if you need it created for your county, we are ready, willing, and able to do that also, because we already have the framework. All we have to do is just put in your information for your particular county. After the regular voter registration deadline on Friday, October the 9th, 2020, you can register and vote in person at one-stop sites during the early voting period, which runs from Thursday, October the 15th, 2020, through Saturday, October the 31st, 2020. This process is known as same-day registration. Same-day registrants must attest to their eligibility and provide proof of residence, as Mr. Marquise Thompson says, through a bill or through your ID. Within 2 business days, the County Board of Elections will review the registration and the registrant's address. Your vote will be counted unless the County Board of Elections determines that you are not qualified to vote. Who can vote in North Carolina? You must register to vote before Election Day in North Carolina. You can find the deadline to register to vote in the dates and deadlines section on the Board of Elections, State Board of Elections website. To register in North Carolina, you must be a citizen of the United States, have lived at the registered address for at least 30 days immediately before the next election in which you want to vote. You have to be 18 years of age by the day of the next general election. Have your rights of citizenship restored if you have been convicted of a felony and completed your felony sentence, including probation, post-release supervision, parole, and or prison term. Now some of that has changed, if I make no mistake. There was a ruling.
Can you address that? That's a question on the line now. Can you vote if you have had a felony?
There is, yes. Go ahead, Marquise. I'll let you.
Well, if you have completed all the terms of the felony, that means you completed your time.
Pull your mic in,
paid,
Marquise.
You've completed your time. You've paid all of your all of the monies associated with your incarceration, whatever you had to pay in restitution. All that stuff is taken care of. Okay, so you're free and clear of all that stuff. Now on probation, all that's done. Then you can re-register even after having had a felony. Once all that's done, you can re-register and vote. So yes, you can vote after having a felony, but once that sentence is served and you've paid all your money and all that stuff, yes, you can re-register and you can vote.
And also, let's clear up that if you are in the process of court and you have not been convicted, you still can vote. If you have a misdemeanor, you can vote. If you have a misdemeanor and are incarcerated, you can vote. Now, it's going to be cumbersome, but you can do it.
Sitting in the jail,
You can be sitting in the jail and you can vote with a misdemeanor. Okay?
Can I just comment real quick?
Sure.
Because there has been a recent court
Yeah,
ruling.
there's a court decision on that.
So
yes.
let me just read really quickly from that court ruling. In North Carolina, voters in detention facilities may be eligible to vote if not currently serving a felony conviction. Voters who are charged with and or convicted of a misdemeanor never lose the right to vote. So if you have a misdemeanor, you never lose the right to vote. The other thing is, this is from a ruling last week. Voters on probation with fines and fees as the sole reason for the felony probation are now eligible to register to vote. Okay, so those are some important considerations.
Yes, that's right.
And I will make sure that we put that ruling so that people can read that, because it is out and it has been released by the State Board of Elections.
Yeah.
That is the newest ruling. Okay. Vote by mail. Request your mail-in ballot with an absentee ballot request form. Fill out the application completely. Submit the request to your local election office. You should request your ballot as far in advance of the election as possible. Deadline to request a ballot by mail is Tuesday, October 27, 2020. When your ballot arrives, read it carefully and follow the instructions to complete it and return it. North Carolina does not offer registration on Election Day. So don't go in on Election Day saying, I want to register to vote, because we cannot do that in the state of North Carolina. Of course, we have military and overseas voters. So active duty military, their families, and overseas citizens can register to vote and request their absentee ballot using the federal postcard application, the FPCA. The FPCA process is done by mail, but your state may offer other options to request and return ballots. Please contact your election official for more information about delivery and return methods, including email, fax, and state online portals to follow the FCA process. Okay? Check your voter registration status. That's important too. And that's something that we really didn't go over tonight.
That's a good point.
In detail, but I need everybody, I don't care if you know you're registered, still go and check your status, okay? Check your voter registration status. You can look up your voter registration status record and verify that your information is correct using North Carolina's voter registration lookup tool. They have that online. It's very easy, simple to follow. That web address is vt.ncsbe.gov/reglkup/. All right, so that's vt.ncsbe.gov/reglkup/. That's to go and to check your status. Please do that, because there are a lot of people who have gone to check their status and they found out that they're not on the books. And so you say, well, I voted 10 years ago. Okay, well, look, I need you to go check on it. Even if you voted in the last election, and I'm not talking about general election, I'm talking about local, state, whatever election, go check your status. Check your status. It's important that you do that.
Pastor Smith, there's a question being asked. What is the date the date that has been assigned to Divine Nine?
You give me a minute, I will look that graphic up.
Other question while you're looking that up is to Mr. Marquise. What if I have extended limited confinement and want to register to vote?
So we might need to read that thing again, because I'm gonna tell you, I have not been briefed, and I'm very cautious about.
Is that what Gelia was just talking about?
Yeah. So and I'm not sure where the lines are as far as, because I
Gelia?
don't know if that extended would.
They're
hit
asking
that.
about extended limited confinement.
Yeah.
I'm going to direct them to youcanvote.org. YOUCANVOTE. Youcanvote.org is the best resource I have found currently with the most updated nuances, because to Marquis' point, there are some nuances, and I don't want to give out wrong information. Youcanvote.org is a really solid site, and I can start looking that up while Pastor Worthy answers that other question on Divine Nine.
Absolutely. The Divine Nine Create Your Date is Friday, October the 16th.
Okay, Divine Nine is October,
Friday, October the 16th.
Friday, October 16th. Couple of other questions are here. How can we get a copy of the graphics? And that was asked by an Alliance member. We're going to email those. After tonight, we'll email all of those. We have Wilson, Halifax, Nash, Edgecombe, and Northampton counties already.
And Bishop, if I may say, the graphics are identical by affinity group, only the names of precincts change. So if you are watching this anywhere in the state, go with grab whatever graphic, just ignore the precincts because they're going to be different for your community, and just go with the affinity groups. So you always have a base to work with wherever you're at. Matter of fact, anywhere in the country, quite frankly.
Right, and that's the beauty of the whole thing, is that we know that everybody doesn't have the same precinct,
Right.
but these are different affinity groups. All you have to, that's why he said by precinct or affinity group. So you can look at it by affinity group, and no matter where you live, you can say, well, Divine Nine votes on blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go on that date. This is something that is not, that we created not just for this general election, but we will use it in every election going forward.
Right.
Because we want to get people in the habit of saying, okay, I need to know when so-and-so or the barbers and the beauticians need to vote. We need to get people in a rhythm, in a mode of, look, it's time to vote. When is my affinity group vote? Where's my precinct vote? That type of thing.
Right.
And I think that we can do that with this initiative.
I want to add, Smith, that there are a bunch of our pastors that are on board with what we're doing. The entire executive group, Dr. Ellis, Bishop Robin Atwater, Richard Gerald, our vice president, a bunch of pastors, a bunch of churches. We just tonight have just, we're not just representing our 4 churches, we are representing the Alliance, but there's a bunch of people. Dr. Danny Ellis, if I didn't mention his name, he's on board. So we want to make sure that you guys know that we have a cadre of folks that are going to be at the polls with us on the on October 15th at 8 a.m. And reminder that pastors that are listening, help us do this. That infinity group for us, that group of pastors is the 15th. So help us push that.
And we need to make sure, we're talking about each one reach one, but I am personally asking all of the members of the ENCMA that each one reach 7. Each one reach 7. That means that we will have more than 700 pastors voting on the same day, which is October the 15th, and putting out Facebook Lives, and not just people in this area, but your friends that live in places like I have friends in pastor friends in Pasquotank and Perquimans, Hertford, Gates, Duplin County, Greene County. I have them even in other parts of the state, but we cover Eastern North Carolina. So make sure each one reach 7.
All right.
Yep.
And all of our members, we need to, Mr. President, you need to make sure that all of our members are committed to this. We're asking you to commit to this tonight. We did on our regular monthly meeting, but I'm sure we're going to ask on next month's meeting. But we need to make sure we ask tonight. Everybody, all pastors, if you're listening and even if you're not a member of ENCMA, your affinity group is October the 15th, the very first day, and we're leading by what example?
Absolutely.
If I could raise something that we haven't touched on, but again, this is something that I've become privy to is happening. For those of you who may be watching or you have parents, my mother's 87, but again, I mean, she lives with me. But for those of you that may be watching that have older parents that may live in senior citizen facilities, I want you to be aware that just like we always have people that are going to try to suppress the vote, we also have people that try to capitalize in the moment. And so there has been some misinformation being communicated at elder facilities where people who are notaries are coming to those facilities trying to make $2, $5 to notarize the mail-in ballots, telling the senior citizens that the mail-in ballot requires a notary. And that is not correct information. It does not. So what's happening is if they're charging $5 for your ballot to be notarized and they don't have the $5, then they think they can't vote. And so I just really want to encourage those who may be watching who have family members, friends, church members that are in these facilities to pay attention. Show up at the facilities, work with them, make sure they have the correct information because there is a lot of misinformation out there. And again, much of it can be targeted at suppressing vote.
There is a notation that's popped up stating that there was 13.6% of our black absentee ballots that were not counted in 2018 due to minor errors, and the voters weren't aware of it. It is expected that the same thing may happen in this election with the expectation of about 40% or greater. What is being done to make sure this percentage does not become a reality?
So we have been working very closely with the state Board of Elections to try to, first of all, make sure that they have the guidance that they have on that is secure, but also when there are discrepancies, when there are problems, we've been working with them very closely to make sure that they let people know what happened, what was wrong in a very timely manner. In fact, it was, I don't want to get into the details, but we really have been pushing hard on that, and some of the changes that you've seen, that you might have seen them announce are because of that. So they have taken steps to make sure that within a timely manner, and that's, of course, up to debate what that means, but that people are notified, if you forgot a signature or if you, whatever happened, didn't date this or whatever, that people are notified and called, and then that is able to be corrected. Here again is the reason why it's very important for you to vote early, mail that thing in early so that that's not something that's happening at the last minute. But they are taking great steps to try to make sure that that does not happen again. We totally are watching that situation because we know that they've been way more requests being made this year. And so should that happen again, it's going to be a problem. So we're definitely working to address that.
I have a question. Like you said, anything can happen. Anything can happen. So let's say that you request an absentee ballot. You get that ballot. You lose that ballot. You know you've lost that ballot. But you still want to vote, and you go into your polling place to vote. How does that work?
You definitely can do that. So in fact, you can request your ballot and know that you got your ballot, know right where it is, and decide, you know what, I'm going to go and vote, and that's fine. Because the system is set up that you can't vote twice. I know there's a lot of crazy talk about voter fraud or whatever, which is a myth. So whichever ballot once your name is attached to a ballot that gets registered or that gets voted, then you're counted, and they know that you voted, and so no other ballot that shows up with your name will be counted. So you're good however you want to do that. You can change your mind. You can get your ballot. You can have your ballot in your hand, go and get in the line and go vote. I mean, so don't let that worry you if you lose your ballot or something like that.
Right, so they'll, what they call spoil the ballot.
That's right.
So they will spoil that ballot, and then they will issue you a new ballot. I do want to say this. Let's say you have a situation where you show up for early voting. They say, well, Mr. Jones, we show that we mailed you a ballot. And you're like, no, I did not request a ballot. If there's ever any misunderstanding where for some reason the person that is waiting on you and you are not in the same page, you always have the option to cast a provisional ballot.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
And so you never have to walk out with no vote.
That's right.
No.
You do not have to do that. So just really make sure you understand all of your rights and all the laws.
And be ready, willing, and able to request that provisional ballot. Say, okay, this is what you're saying about me. I don't think it's true. Give me a provisional ballot. I need a
Correct.
and they have to give it to you.
They
Correct.
have to give
Yes.
it to you, yeah.
And I would just like to say, and this is in kudos to our governor, our secretary of state, our attorney general, they've been working with the Board of Elections, as Marcus said, so closely that there's so many training sessions available online to people that they can look up on the North Carolina Board of Elections website, they can look on their county Board of Elections website, and just like this, attend a virtual seminar about what they need to know about voting. The information is out there. Knowledge is power, so I just would encourage everyone out there, tell a friend, tell several friends, tell your whole church that they should always attend all the voter seminars there are, because information just changed last week
Yeah.
about those who are incarcerated
Right,
can
right.
vote.
That's
So nobody knows it all. The information is constantly changing. So please, please, please stay on top of this and stay abreast, because it's just so important. We can't afford to miss one single vote.
That's right.
Okay, so we have about 7 minutes to go, unless we have any more questions that are coming across. Do you have any more questions, Bishop?
One last question was they wanted you to address the possibility of family members being able to drop ballots off for those who are unable to get to the polls.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you have to be, all right. So, I really recommend you not do that, but a close personal relative of a family member, if you're voting absentee, so if you vote absentee, you got to mail it. But they can go with you. I want to make sure, read that question again, because there's a lot of nuances with it. I'm mixing the absentee ballot
Wanted
up
to
with
make
help.
sure that we address that family members can drop off ballots for those who are unable to get to the polls.
So that sounds like an absentee ballot situation where, yes. So when you vote absentee, the ballot will be mailed to you. You fill out the ballot, and you decide you want to go take it to the early voting site, let's just say, or you want to take it to the Board of Elections. You can do that, right? You can either mail it, you can take it to the Board of Elections, or you can take it to an early voting site. If you get to that early voting site and you just can't do it or whatever, but your mother is there, your brother, someone in your immediate family, they can take that into that early voting site for you and drop that off. Yes, that is permitted, but it has to be, your immediate family. That is a possibility when you're absentee voting. That's right.
Okay. Is there anything else, Bishop?
That was it?
All right. I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to say some last words. I'll start down with Dr. Worthy. We'll go on through from my left over to my right.
Once again, it's been a joy to share this dialogue with such great and information being shared. I cannot stress to us the importance and how important that it is that we get out, let our voices be heard. We've heard it over and over again. What we do tonight, what we do October 15th through the 31st, Bishop. October 15th through the 31st.
Yes, that's
Not
it.
November 3rd, October 15th through the 31st. What we do then will set the tone and begin to set foundations for the future. Let's not miss the opportunity. Let's not forget to take somebody with us. What we do is going to make things greater, and we're believing God for that. Prayer is one thing, but let's put some feet on those prayers
I
and
love
some
it.
action behind those prayers. Let's get out. Let's vote.
Yes.
Man, it's a good word, and there may appear to be some redundancy here. That's deliberate, because we need to keep saying
Same thing.
same thing over and over.
Yes, sir.
Until we all get it. And so, two things in the closing comment for me. And again, thank you, Bishop, and thank you for all the panelists. Nash County has done a really good job of making information available, and so there's a good site, NashVotes2020.com. Would encourage you to take a look at that if you're in Nash County. A lot of the information is relative to other counties as well, but NashVotes2020.com. And so, since Worthy alliterated one of his points, I'm gonna close with my alliteration. I think number one is be prayerful. So I just would encourage you to do that. Number one, be prayerful. Number two, make a plan. Have a voting plan. And number three, be patient. I really believe we're going to have, and I pray we have, the largest turnout that we've ever had in North Carolina. I do believe if you vote early, you can be less patient. But I do believe you need to be patient when you get to the polls. Remember, we are in COVID. Because we're in COVID, this is what it's going to mean. There's only so many people at 6 feet apart that can get in the room at the same time. That means it's possible, and I think even probable, that when you get to the poll, you may have to initially stand outside until you can get in the building. Just be patient and make sure you cast that vote.
Well, thank you again for having me, and this has been such an amazing conversation with such esteemed panelists. I'm just reminded of the words that the late Representative John Lewis said when he was here in Fayetteville a couple of years ago, that we must be missionaries, spreading the message of voting. And so that is just my prayer, is that we all take up that mantle to become missionaries, spreading the message of the importance to vote. One last practical measure that I'll leave you with is print out a sample ballot. I have been, and this might sound funny, but I have been at the ballot box and I've been intimidated. And there's nothing worse than feeling stupid by yourself when you're sitting there and you see a name that you might not recognize or an office that you don't know. And that can be intimidating, but if you have a sample ballot that you can get right now and you have time to look at it, look up the candidates, look up the issues in which they are for or against. Take that sample ballot to the ballot box with you and just copy it over. Please, while we're all at home right now, go to the North Carolina Board of Elections and get your sample ballot. Look it up for your county, for your precinct, print it out, fill it out, and take that with you.
The last thing I'll say is that there's no such thing as just the way it is. Everything that we see around us in this world, someone made it that way. There's been a decision that was made, or the actions that were taken, or lack of action that was taken, have us right where we are in this moment. It was done on purpose. And so the future that we want to create, that's got to be done on purpose too. It's not just going to happen. It's got to be us doing the things that it takes to make the changes that we want. The future that we're going to be experiencing is going to be based upon what we do right now. And none of us can change or make things the way we want by ourselves. It takes us working together, hand in hand, to do it as church members and as citizens. And one of the main ways we do that is by voting. So when you have a brother or a sister or a mother or someone that says, you know what, I just don't feel like voting, or I just don't want to pay the price to vote, or whatever that is, we're already living through and paying the price for people not doing actions before. Whatever is wrong with our society right now is because people didn't do what it took to make it right. And right now we have an opportunity, and I'm telling you, we're at a tipping point. Things are going to either get better or they're going to get really, really bad. And it's in your hands. It's in my hands. We have the power to do what we want to do in this country, but we have to exercise that power, and we can do it by voting. And we have to do it, and you have to make sure your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, everyone does it, and make sure they know it's important to you personally that they do it.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody who was on this panel tonight. Dr. Worthy, Pastor Gaillard, Mrs. Pegues, and Brother Marquise Thompson, my good friend. Glad to have you here. And we also want to take this opportunity to thank the staff here at Greater Joy Church for everything they did to make this possible. And we thank you so much for your hospitality, and we thank God for the angel of this house, who is the one and only Bishop Shelton Daniel, who is our president of the Eastern North Carolina Ministerial Alliance. My last thoughts are these. When I was a kid, my grandmother used to sit down and tell us stories about different things that happened in the past. She always talked about her father. She called him Papa. She said, Papa, when he went to vote, he went into the voting poll, and there on the counter was a jar of black-eyed peas. And the man who was there to take the vote said, can you count the number of black-eyed peas that are in this jar. If you can tell me how many in this jar, then I will give you a ballot and vote. And so my great-grandfather said, well, do you know how many are in the jar? And he said, it's not up to, and he knocked it off of the counter and said, well, you count them, and once you find out how many there are, you tell me, but until then, give me my ballot because I want to vote. So there are people in our community who have done what it took to vote. They understood the importance of voting. And so we need to make sure that we understand the importance of voting and not the proverbial jar of peas off the jar. And those peas are your excuses for why not, or it's just going to be their way, or my vote doesn't count. But I need you to knock it off of the counter, and I need you to ask for your ballot, and I need for you to vote. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Eastern North Carolina Ministerial Alliance's 2020 Voters Forum. We are going to do this again. We have to do this again, and we'll have a different, maybe perhaps a different set of panelists, and we'll talk about different things, because between now and November 3rd, believe you me, all kinds of issues are going to come up regarding voting, and especially in a crucial state like North Carolina. So goes North Carolina, so goes the White House. So let us all be prepared. Take the information that you got tonight, share this information. And the good thing about it is it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook Live, so you can go back and watch it again. So we're going to come back again. We thank you for your time. God bless you, and good night.